So what I want to do, my name is Latoya Walters. I am one of the admissions and recruitment managers here at the School of Education. Thank you for joining our EdD alumni panel today. We definitely want to make sure you guys have as much time with our panelists to kind of hear what they have to say and what they have to share and not hear from me. So what I want to do is kick us off by introducing our moderator, which is Dr. Shallegra Moye. So Dr. Shallegra Moye has been working with children and families for over 20 years and is very passionate about children, learning, and the community. She also earned her doctorate of education right here at the School of Education in Urban Education. And she is currently holding the position as the Associate Director of Equity, Justice, and Strategic Initiatives for our Office of Child Development. So, Dr. Moye, go ahead and take it over.
Thank you so much. Every time I hear somebody read about me, I'm like, wow, that chick is dope. So happy to be here. I'm so glad that you all have joined us out there in the Zoom webinar audience. I am going to kick it off to our illustrious panelists. And I'm going to ask you if you would share, and by the way of an introduction of yourself, your name, the year you completed the program, and the organization for which you work now. And then tell us about why you chose an EdD here at the University of Pittsburgh as opposed to some other terminal degree. And since I know everybody so well, except for you, Annessa, I'm going to start with you because I want to know who you are.
Kick off. Let me know if I am forgetting anything that you asked us to share. My name is Annessa Bontrager, and I am currently a senior project manager at a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. called Share Our Strength. My previous education is in community health and health promotion management. I was very interested in the EdD at the University of Pittsburgh for the hybrid program that it had in terms of doing online, but also getting some face-to-face time. And was looking for something that was going to stretch me a little bit more. So a lot of the public health programs that I was looking at, I felt like I had already had those classes before. So as I was looking at the University of Pittsburgh, specifically health and physical activity, there were definitely some classes and some skills that I felt like I was lacking that would really propel me in my career. So that was my decision for choosing the University of Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much. And what year did you complete the program?
Oh my gosh. I feel like time doesn't exist since the pandemic, but I believe I graduated in spring of 2020.
2020. Oh. Yeah, no wonder you couldn't remember. Thank you. Thank you so much, Annessa. Dr. Wright, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks so much. My name is Lauren Wright. I am the Chief People Officer at the Children's Institute of Pittsburgh, right in Squirrel Hill. So fairly close. There are plenty of places I can see the Cathedral of Learning from here. I decided to pursue the EdD at the University of Pittsburgh. I was currently a Pitt employee at the time, so cannot deny tuition benefits played a part. I was also looking for a practitioner-based program where I felt like while I was learning, I could also be actively engaging in the work that I was taking from the classroom, and that really allowed me to learn how to apply the concepts into everyday life and my work today. So I found the program to be very, very valuable in that regard, and I'm happy I chose it. And I graduated in the summer of 2021.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Dr. Bob Scherrer.
Thank you, Shallegra, and Happy New Year to everyone. So my name is Bob Scherrer. I'm the Executive Director of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. We're one of 29 intermediate units in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, kind of between the Pennsylvania Department of Ed and the 500 school districts that are here in Pennsylvania. Previously, I was the superintendent of the North Allegheny School District, and I also served as a principal in Pittsburgh Public Schools, Woodland Hills School District, and was an administrator at Peters Township, and started my career as a teacher at Baldwin High School. So grew up in Pittsburgh. Pitt has always been something that I value the opportunity to have it right here in our own backyard. And as an administrator, one of the things that I saw was just so many of the leaders in the region had their degrees from Pitt. and just realized that, okay, there was something special about Pitt to sort of have all these individuals go through the program. And it was one of those things that not only the connections that I built, what I learned, certainly has been incredibly valuable to me throughout my career. I'm probably the oldest person maybe on this call, and I graduated my doctorate back in 2009. So I look forward to talking to everyone today.
Excellent. We'll be sure to get you an AARP SOE card to commemorate that. And last but not least, my cohort member and friend, Dr. Ellerbee.
Hello, good morning. Wait, hold on. Good afternoon. It is lunchtime. I'm Daren Ellerbee. I'm the director of the University of Pittsburgh Educational Outreach Center, located in the office of the provost. I've been at Pitt as an employee for 6 years. However, I graduated from the university in undergrad in the early 2000s. Unlike Bob, I'm not throwing any years out there that could age me. So we'll just give a range of the 2000s. And the reason why I selected the program primarily was because I'm going to be very transparent with all of you. I never thought I would have a doctorate. I was okay with a master's degree. I went one step further than my mom, who earned a bachelor's at Penn State. And it wasn't until I transitioned out of city government into higher education, being in an environment of education, being around so many people either earning doctorates or who held doctorates, and being encouraged by those people, colleagues, friends, everyone, to do it because of the education benefit. I dove into the deep end and went through and proudly endured the EdD program. So with it's not easy, but it's worth it. And I officially conferred, though Shallegra and I started together, it took me about another year and a half to finish. So I officially conferred on my birthday, which was December 16th of 2023.
Congratulations again. Okay, I see some hand claps coming up from the audience. And I'll just share with you all the year I completed, which was 2022. I am from the inaugural cohort, and I say that with such pride, the inaugural Urban Ed EdD program here at the University of Pittsburgh's School of Education. And I chose the program for a few reasons. I am a first gen in my family, but interestingly, I always wanted to pursue a terminal degree because I have a deep love of learning, formal learning as well as informal learning, like going to people's dissertations for learning and fun, reading dissertations because like I want to know some stuff. And so at the time I decided to apply to the program, I was working with a program out of the Center for Urban Education at a local Pittsburgh public school, UPrep, and had an opportunity to meet the dynamic faculty who were here at that time. And I wanted to learn more. I wanted to stretch. I wanted to be part of the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And so I was like, yep, that's for me. And I also told Madam President, former Dean Kinlock, that if she didn't accept me into the program, I was still going to come to graduation because I was going to go to all the classes and I was going to know the same thing everybody else knew. And it would be really odd if I hadn't actually been in the program. And so, here I am. And so with that, I am going to I see a question in the chat, or we see something. Okay, they'll do that there. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off the first question. And I'm just going to put the question out there and ask you to be brief in case your other colleagues want to join in, but we'll kind of popcorn it around. And so actually, Bob, I'm going to start with you. Because you are one of our more senior graduates of this program. Is there something you wish that you would have known about the EdD program prior to applying and being accepted?
I think, and I've heard some of the similar answers from the folks that are here. I had done my due diligence. I knew there were a number of programs that I could pursue, but as I just sort of looked at the landscape and talked to others who went through the program, the value that it provided seemed to be something that would really work well for me personally, but also someone who really did want to stay in the region. So while Pitt has an international footprint, it was really exciting to be able to sort of look at my own backyard for this type of training. And so in terms of what I think I wish I would have known is, and I think Pitt does a better job of this now, is just understanding what that trajectory looks like through the courses, how that ties into the dissertation, if that's one of the programs that you're in. And so just maybe understanding what that through line would look like. It's always helpful. I always like to begin with the end in mind and what's that expectation going to look like. And what I've seen over the last several years has really been intentionality behind kind of providing that for incoming students. So that was the one thing, is just really having a clear understanding and direction of what that was going to look like. But then I felt as I went through it, you build such a positive network with the others that are going through the program with you. Those are people still today that I rely upon when I have questions. You get to meet, obviously the professors that are just amazing in the field, and you walk away understanding things that you just didn't know before you go into the program. So I think those were things that kind of that openness of wanting to learn when I went in, but also at my time, a better understanding of what that full trajectory would have looked like.
And others, please feel free to come off. Would you all like me to repeat the question? I was like, what? Nobody has anything to say? Is there something you wish you knew before you entered or applied even for the EdD program that you discovered? What was it? And how was it significant to you?
Okay. That's what I thought the question was. Yeah, I can comment on that. So when I applied for and was accepted into the EdD program, I was thinking I was going to continue a career in higher education. So I had been at the University of Pittsburgh as the director of undergraduate recruitment, and I was originally thinking of doing a dissertation on college access programming. In conversations with my advisor and really thinking about where I saw myself moving as far as career goes, I started to realize that wasn't the space that I ultimately wanted to be in. And I was given an opportunity to pivot the trajectory of my study. And so I ended up moving into studying multi-generational management training, and I was able to intern with the Human Resources Office at the University of Pittsburgh, and the EdD accordingly played a huge role in me changing from the career trajectory in higher ed as a director of undergraduate recruitment to my first job at this company as vice president of people strategy. And in a year, utilizing, quite frankly, many of the tools from the EdD program, be promoted to this C-suite level position as the chief people officer here at the organization. But truly, I didn't know going in that if I had a topic in mind, that I had a trajectory in mind, that there was going to be space for me to continue to learn about myself, continue to learn about what I was passionate about, and then ultimately make a pivot to something as large as my dissertation that could really help me in my career moving forward. So that was exciting to find out, and lots of credit to my phenomenal advisor, Linda D'Angelo, who made that path possible. But that's really something that was available, and that was exciting for me and career changing, quite frankly.
Thank you.
I was going to say something very similar, just in the sense of recognizing that I had room to play, I guess. What I thought my dissertation was going to be changed probably 5 or 6 times. And I was trying from the beginning to just be set on one thing and not necessarily explore, which I wish I would have known that I had that freedom in the beginning, because I think it just would have been a lot less stressful. So I would say there's definitely room to find yourself, find your interests, find what the next step is. And that does not have to be pinned down in the first semester, nor is it by any means expected to be pinned down in the first semester.
Touche, Annessa. I might even add that if you don't change your dissertation topic at least the first year and a half, you might not be learning anything. I don't know, because as you learn more things, right, it's just so expansive, and you're like, oh my goodness, I could do this, I could do right. So yeah, that's such a key point. Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Ellerbee, I think I've seen that you were going to come off mute, so
Yeah,
please.
well, my response was just going to be simple. I appreciated learning about the class schedule. Seriously, as a working professional who's researched other programs, right? I'm not going to throw any colleges out there, but there's a PhD program held, that a college in Pittsburgh has
Listen,
that I was really looking at. But, when I found out about this program, the schedule, the flexibility of it, like only having to come to class on Saturdays was really appealing to me. And then and then again, I will agree with Annessa about the flexibility and being able to grow into it. Yeah, because we all changed our problem of practice 100 times, I think, in the first year. So that was wonderful as well.
and we have a student ambassador who has joined us. And I would just invite Lynn, and certainly you don't have to, but you are a current student. And so I wonder if you have anything that you might be able to enrich this conversation with in terms of, something you wish you had known.
So I echo everything that has already been mentioned. One thing that I wish I would have known is how to utilize my advisor more. Your advisor is here to be a support and is a champion for you. But I think a lot of times EdD students think they have to be perfect in the eyes of their advisor and are afraid to reach out when perhaps they're doubtful of what they're doing, or they want to change, or they don't make sense. You have to be okay with being vulnerable in the eyes of your advisor, because they are here to be a support for you. That's the one thing I wish I could go back in time and change. I wouldn't change anything else, because I love where I am. I love the work that I've done. I love the knowledge I've gained, but I wish I would have learned how to utilize my advisor more in the process.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Feel free to head back, and we'll pull you in, as is necessary. I did see something that was dropped in the chat that I wanted to just bring into the conversation before we move to the next question. Thank you, Mariah Moore. She says, how has the EdD program content overlapped with your corporate professional career? I worked in early childhood since I completed my undergrad in 2021. But in my last year of my master's, I found myself in a corporate setting, which is so staunchly different for so many reasons. I'm currently debating on if the EdD or any D program is for me. So first, I'm going to say, Mariah, hey girl, hey, yes, any D program is for you if that is what you want. So come on in. I actually had a similar trajectory, but in reverse, right? So I started the first 20 years of my career in corporate America, right? And then I transitioned into education as a career in 2017. And I can't remember who mentioned it, but the practicality, right? The EdD is a practitioner's degree, right? And so certainly the PhD is all that and a bag of chips, right? But when you are on the ground, when you are in real time, thinking about how to synthesize that very rich, expansive data and information that PhDs have made available to us, right? With tools, as Lauren said, that you pick up in the EdD program, it really is the best bang for your buck, right? You are going to leave at least the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh's EdD program ready to take care of business in your profession, in your career, in whatever ways that makes sense. And so I'll ask if any of our panelists want to maybe address that before I move to the next question.
Yeah, I'll add something.
Thanks.
So one of the, not one of the, but I think the main research method that we learned in the EdD program was improvement science, which is applicable to many different workplace settings. And that was important to me because when I first started this program, I held a different position at the university. I was a director of community engagement and not a director of educational outreach, which is different, right? I was actually in the community setting in a physical space off of campus. And so when I first started the program, my problem of practice really centered that physical space. And when I transitioned out of it, I had to pivot quickly. Improvement science allowed me to do that pivot fairly, not completely, but fairly seamlessly. So keep that in mind. I can't speak for other D programs, but as it relates to this EDD program, I feel like as you continue to transition, because life continues to happen, right? I don't even know how many babies we had born in the years that we were in the program, right? Unfortunately, there were losses too. It's because when I went through, we met for 2 semesters and then the COVID happened. So, we experienced a lot of loss together, but we grew together. Folks went to different jobs like Shallegra. I don't even know how many you had during that time too, just to put your business out there as well. But so with all of that being said, don't let the changes that you're having in your career, Mariah, hold on, let me make sure that's Mariah. Don't allow the changes that you have in your career to prevent you from earning a doctorate if that's what you want. A colleague told me at the beginning of the EDD program, I don't have kids, so keep this in mind. I think all the parents will chuckle with this, but a colleague said, it's like when you have a kid, you really don't know what you're doing, but somehow you get through every single day. And that's how I felt in this EDD program, pursuing it. You get through, and with your cohort mates, you'll get through to the end.
Can I just add one thing, Shallegra?
Absolutely.
So the other thing that I would suggest, and like listening to this is great, and maybe connecting with us after would be good as well, but finding the mentorship or connecting with someone who can help you translate the space, because so much really does translate. I found myself this week building a presentation where I realized subconsciously I had been exercising improvement science and going through what the program teaches you, the PDSA cycle. And I was in the process of merging 2 departments within my organization and really figuring out, how do I do that? How do I try a little bit of something? How do I look at what I did? How do I bring some study to that? How do I assess it? And how do I start that cycle again? And there is so much that the program puts into practice for you that when you get into a variety of different environments, it's almost something that you don't recognize that you're doing effortlessly. And that's one of the things that really does help, that even so if you think, you're sitting in this different environment and you feel like it's corporate, it's nonprofit, it's someplace that I've never been before, a lot of the education, because it is so practical, really does travel with you, and you are educated well enough so that even if you're not putting to paper, I'm doing a PDSA, you really are doing those things naturally. And the other thing that I would say is really, really helpful about the program that helps in any environment is the idea that it teaches you to stand on the balcony. We always talked about being on the balcony and not on the dance floor, and seeing a system. And all kinds of companies and organizations are systems, regardless of where you're working. And being able to learn how to stand up above that and evaluate and think about how the pieces work together, that is a really transferable skills across industries, speaking as an HR professional. And that is also something that will just make you so powerful in a bunch of different type of environments, as not being clouded by so much that comes into the day-to-day, and really being taught to move forward, step back, not take things personally, make decisions informed internally and externally. There's so much you can do, and so far you can go in your career if you really understand how to do those things and how to utilize those skills. And the EDD program really does help each person walk away with that.
Yeah. Annessa and Bob, feel free to add to that. I just asked to tighten it up a little bit.
I'm just going to plus on that. It wasn't necessarily the technical content in terms of health and physical activity. We weren't talking about how to design a personal training program. That was kind of expected to have already been known when an undergrad or a master's. So it was really high level. It was change management, organizational management, how to be a scholarly practitioner. And so those, when I talked about earlier, pushing my skill set, I feel like I had the technical expertise as in nutrition and physical activity. I was looking for something that would help me grow in my career at a higher level, at like the change management organization level. So it wasn't necessarily that technical expertise that I learned, but higher level how to manage up.
And I would agree with everything. The insights that have been shared have been fantastic. And my specific program was school leadership. And what I found throughout my career is when I was a teacher and getting my principal certification, you now thought beyond your own classroom. You looked at, okay, how does the school work, right? And then you become a principal and you move into a program like this and you start to see, okay, I have a school that I'm responsible for, but now what about an entire school district? And so I think that there was incredible practicality going through the program in my role at the time as a principal, because now you're sort of stepping outside yourself and your experience to really kind of see the system. And then certainly when you step into the role, in my case, as an assistant superintendent, as a superintendent, you constantly went back to the things that you learned in this program. So there was tremendous practicality for me personally.
Thank you, Bob. I think one of the other really rich opportunities that our EDD offers, right, is that full cohort experience. Bob, when you talked about the school leadership, not only are you going through this cohort model with folks who are doing the kind of work you're doing, but in other places, right? So there's this sharing and exchange of information, but then you're also on your Saturday mornings, that one day of the month that Daren mentioned that you come to campus, you are in a much fuller, right, cohort of folks where, again, you're hearing about other folks, other experiences, you're doing some networking, you're doing some connecting, and it just really enriches the experiences in ways that you can't necessarily quantify, but, end up being really, really helpful. I'm going to next question a little bit, and I also have a question in the chat that I'm going to probably come back to next because it's really intriguing. But I seen, hello, Educator Sanchez. She has asked the question about balancing, right, real life, balancing your external responsibilities. And Lynn, thank you for that very beautiful response that you put in the chat. But that is, for me, I'm thinking about that, how you balance your external responsibilities, right, with this idea that many of us are pursuing an EDD, right, because we want to accelerate our career growth, right? And so how are you all finding that you're balancing that, right? Whether you are, have children, whether you're married or single, right? We all still have responsibilities and obligations outside of the EDD program. And before I kick that off, and I'd ask all of you all to share that, I would just say that one of the things that was important and helpful for me, right, is identifying who my village was, right, before I came into the program, right, because I understand that I am going to need, because I am a parent, I'm a primary parent. I, have lots of civic obligations and passions that I'm pursuing, right? And so it was really important for me to understand who were the folks that were going to be able to support me with childcare, with study time, holding me accountable, like all of those things. So, understanding what that was going to mean. And then to Daren's point, really building that camaraderie with your school-specific cohort member. Like we always say in that inaugural Urban Ed EDD program, there's no way we would have gotten through it, no matter when we finished, without each other, particularly as we navigated that experience at such a monumental change in the world, right? Because not only was it COVID and loss and grief, but it was a racial reckoning like we had not seen in most of our lifetimes, right? In a school of education that was very much and very unapologetically articulating its commitment to equity and justice and disrupting of harm and oppression. So all of that. And so with that, I'll ask, I'll kind of popcorn it off, and Annessa, I'll start with you and then I'll just bring you in.
I was living in Northern Virginia, where I still live, when I did the program. So I actually traveled up on Friday evenings, but then I had a hotel and then attended class on Saturday and then left. So it was about a 4-hour drive each way. Long, but definitely doable if only doing it once a month. And that's something I wanted. I was looking for the in-person too. I did not want something that was just strictly online. I will double, triple, quadruple down on finding your village. My cohort was, I don't know what some of them are larger. My cohort was 9 folks, constantly in communication, probably on a daily basis while we were going through things. And there were check-ins, there were reminders, there was brainstorming, there was leaning on them. Definitely helped. You definitely have to be you will become an organized person, right? There is definitely a time management component to this. But also recognizing that I would say most, are working professionals and have other responsibilities. So while I'm not encouraging every assignment you say you do an extra day or two, if you are transparent and you are open in sharing that you needed more time, that was never anything that I was denied. Everyone is really along on the ride to help get you to the end, and have you learn as much as possible. So I would just say, yes, it was tough. Yes, I had to say no to weekend brunches with my friends, which sucked a little bit, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Annessa, you come through with the fire, right? Because and when you talked about the time management piece, I thought, actually, we're not managing time. Time's moving on, whether we are doing what we're obligated to do or not, right? So it's really about self-management. It's about, I can't go to that brunch. I need to hold off on that vacation until another time, right?
Yeah.
I need to take
a big party when you're done with your dissertation. You just have a big celebration. And
yeah.
So it's like all the things that you missed, all your friends come together and celebrate.
Because that's really real. Lauren, anything you want to add to how you balance the external responsibilities with this, desire to want to accelerate your own career?
Yeah, so I agree, honestly, with everything that's been shared. The other thing that I think was huge about this program was the collaboration across cohorts, even the people years ahead of you. That was a huge resource. Like the times where you didn't know what was going to be happening next, or what's the dissertation process like, or what assignments are going to be due next. Like everyone was so willing to share in Pitt's program. And I don't know if that is the truth of every single program, but even if someone graduated a few years ahead, they were willing to share presentations, a copy of their dissertation, best practices for dealing with your advisor. So the quick summary of that is, if you're not shy, if you're willing to ask, if you're willing to be open, people want to pour into each other. I don't know if it's a Pitt thing, an alum thing, whatever the case may be, but everyone is really part of your community. The dissertation is individualized, but the program itself is about getting everyone who wants to be part of that experience through. And I found so much great support throughout the time there. And I think that was, to your points, Shallegra, and to your points, Annessa, I think that was critical when there just wasn't enough actual time. So it was really about, how can I find the quote unquote life hacks, the shortcuts, to Lynn's point in the chat, what do I really not need to read? And people do have clues about that, right? Like, this will be very significant for you. And this is something that, if you want to enjoy it for your edification, sure, but it's not going to matter. But having that support was super critical and abundantly helpful.
Thank you, Lauren. And Lynn, I read everything, page by page, everything. I couldn't help it. I still do. Daren, Bob, anything you want to add to this conversation?
Daren?
I was just going to say, I'll tell you what I remember hearing at the alumni panel I attended years ago. And I can't remember who said it, but it stood out to me, and I want to pass this along. once you get in the program, do not give up on life. Even though you'll have to prioritize, you might miss the banquet or the cookout or something like that. The person said, make sure you're working out, make sure you're still cooking dinner, make sure you're taking the time away. Don't lose yourself, right? So I say all of that to say work-life balance. I preach it, I live it. I encourage it among my staff and my mentees and more. But figure out what that balance looks like for you and stick to it. So for me, especially when it came to writing the dissertation, I became all of a sudden a morning person. I woke up at 5 a.m. Because you can get some really good writing done in the morning, undistracted at that time. And if you're wondering, it didn't take long for me to go back to waking up at like a 7 a.m. time. But I did that for over a year because I was that focused on getting finished. You get to a point where nothing's going to stop you. If you want to finish, you're going to finish. So with that in mind, just figure out what works best for you. For the parents, you might have to get up at odd hours, depending on how your kids are sleeping and what they're doing. But I tell you what, a lot of parents got through this program, a lot with kids under the age of 3. Okay, I don't know how they did it, but they did it, and you can too. You can balance it.
Yeah, and I think sage advice is being shared by all, and I think that there's one thing to be mindful of. I mean, there will be sacrifices, right? You just can't fit a program in like this and then continue to do everything the way that you're doing it today. And so you have to be honest with yourself. And the village analogy is a good one. And so whatever that looks like, because it also looked different during the program as it did then when I moved into the dissertation phase. And so when I was writing my dissertation, it was a Saturday morning thing. So I woke up early every Saturday morning. I locked myself in a room. I had 2 young kids at the time, and that was the agreement, in advance with my wife. And I'll come out around noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And I did that for almost a year, but that was the commitment that I needed to make to do it. Other folks would stay up and they would spend an hour every evening. So you got to figure out what works for you, what support systems are in place. But you will have to make some sacrifices, and you just have to know going in that you can do this, right? There's nothing that we can't do if we don't have the intestinal fortitude to get it done. But it's being honest with yourself, being honest with those that live in and around you, so that they can support you as well. But it's it's doable. It's just you have to think some of those things through in the beginning so you don't get overwhelmed.
That's thank you, Bob, for adding into the conversation the reality of how things change at the dissertation phase, right? When you suddenly are looking at year 3 and you don't have coursework and you were like, oh, I can head to the banquet and the cookout. And no. Now, like, the rubber meets the road, right? Because that is all self-directed. And one of the things that I think is really important to remember, right, as we are holding the reality of, right, wanting or feeling like we need to advance our careers, that this terminal degree pursuit has to be something that you want for you. It cannot just be for the sake of satisfying some external requirement, checking some box, because when you've got to sacrifice, when you've got to alter your schedule, when you've got to ask people for help, and please, you got to ask for help, whether it's I need an extension on the paper, I need whatever it is you need, you have to. This program will teach you how to ask for help. But when you're ready to purchase your degree from Amazon, to Annessa's point, like, what am I even doing here? People already think I'm a doctor and I know some stuff. And so, like, I'm done, I'm out, I'm just going to purchase this EdD. You can't do that, right? And it's going to be that this is what you want, whether everybody or nobody calls you doctor so-and-so, such and such. Like, you want this because you want this, because you know that this is going to make you a better scholar, a better practitioner, a better leader, a better learner, a better human being, right? And so there is a question that is in the Q&A that I want to spend some time with as our time is wrapping up, because all good things must come to an end. Ashlyn said, similar to the prior question that we can't remember what it was now, but I find that academia is very idealistic. And while it is great to have those lofty goals, particularly in regards to racial justice, sometimes the real world can be a rude awakening and has more barriers. How do you balance the needs and constraints of your professional roles while leveraging your position and power? Ashlyn, thank you for including that piece about power, right, to achieve your personal goals and motivations, right? And that's a really, really large question. But hopefully, Ashlyn, I'm doing a decent job of synthesizing how those of us in this program are holding the reality of racial justice, right? Because we are racialized beings. And as a Black woman who matriculated from this program, like race and racism, more specifically, are very real challenges and barriers, even in a program that is committed to equity and justice, right? So how are we acknowledging that and embracing that? In the real world, right? Because, the academy can sometimes be a bubble. So I will start with Daren, and then I'll popcorn it around to you all.
Yeah, I saw that question in the chat and I appreciated it. I think for me, I found so the fact that I work in higher education, and I also feel like the fact that we actively pursued an urban education track, that it provided a certain level of safety. Like I knew going into the program and selecting urban ed specifically that I would be exploring issues around equity, social justice, et cetera, and most likely being critical of the institution that I work for, right? As it relates to my work and my research interests. So, and that's pretty much what showed up in my dissertation, right? But again, because I'm within higher education, and I had the guidance of my advisor, Dr. Elon Dancy, who is the head of the Center for Urban Education, as well as many other faculty involved in urban ed and throughout the school, I was encouraged, even at times when I felt trepidation. Even at times when and I'm being so transparent on this, I didn't even realize I was going to go here today, but even at times where, I was concerned about how my research would be received, I still pushed forward boldly because it was something that I was interested in. And I definitely believe in leveraging the research, for future benefit. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I feel like it depends on, we always have to continue to do self-evaluations, right? So I think you need to, look in the mirror and just ask yourself where you are and what your comfort level is. And if you're like me and you felt compelled, to push against a system that is highly racialized, right? And explore that, then know that this EdD program and the faculty involved in it will support you, whether you're in urban ed or not.
Bob, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's interesting because I am well aware that the program I came through has morphed and shifted and adjusted over years for all the right reasons. And just, I'm on the alumni board with Shallegra. And so, I hear some of the things and see some of the things that we're doing differently. And it's a good thing. Using that question, though, if I go back to then when I was moving through the program, what was interesting is that idea of, okay, here's my day job. What I'm doing as a school administrator. Here's what I'm being asked to do sometimes in these courses. I don't know if you still do think pieces or you had to write these very, very long and flowing, writings around things. And it's like, I am a principal. If I can't put it on one page, my staff won't read it. So there was the reality of my day job, but then also having to stretch myself coming into the program. And so at the time it was frustrating because, it just was frustrating. But now I see over the years, there have been other opportunities as my career has grown where I do have to be a little more flowery. I do need to tell a story more so than just the bulleted list. And so while maybe in the moment I wasn't seeing the direct relationship between the course and what I needed to do tomorrow at work, I am seeing that over time, many of those skills, many of those things that I was asked to do have certainly sort of, paid off. And so, I do think that even when there might not be that direct application to what you do today or even tomorrow, you are learning things that will certainly be part of your toolkit as you move forward in your career.
We're done at 1. Is that correct? Somebody, okay. So because you all are bringing up so many things that we obviously will not be able to get through all of these questions. But I heard tools come up early on in our conversation, and it kind of answers some of the questions that I would imagine many of our participants are wondering about. Can you tell us maybe top 3 tools that you took away from from the EdD program at the School of Education? Tell us 3, and then share what one of them actually means in your day-to-day life. Lauren, I'll start with you.
Okay. So I think I already been tool dropping from
you motivated this question.
Yes. So I know I talked about the balcony and the PDSA cycles, and also, and this is the one that I will focus on because it also ties back a little bit to the previous question, is navigating diversity, but in the sense of the way people approach thought. So by that, I mean, I am a millennial woman of color in the C-suite. I obviously I'm not surrounded by people who look like me yet, goals. But the value of things like diversity can be translated. And that is something that I learned a lot about through the program. So the idea that some people you can approach with feelings and how someone feels when they're in a space of difference. But some people, it's data. And so the ability to do both, to be able to use personal experience, but also to say organizations that don't suffer from groupthink, who can innovate, who can change, who can adapt, natural consequences of diversity, positive consequences of diversity, well, that contributes to productivity, to revenue, to positive change, to staying competitive in a constantly changing environment. Well, all of a sudden, my audiences have become more receptive to some of the things that I maybe was saying differently earlier in my career and before the education of this program, to be able to say, you'd love to get to a place where you just lead with your heart and everyone hears that. But having a program like this that allows you to communicate with that variety and to be a chameleon and be able to adapt your language, your approach to different scenarios, to my earlier points and those questions about how do you adapt to those different environments, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever the case may be. This really teaches you about that pivoting, changing, articulating, and that has been abundantly helpful from where I sit, and I'm sure for many others as well.
Thank you so much. Annessa, I'm going to kick it over to you. If you could mention a tool or 2 that Lauren has not mentioned, that would be great for the audience.
Okay, tool or 2. I was also going to piggyback off the PDSA, something that I feel like I'm utilizing on a daily basis, even if I'm not realizing that I'm utilizing it. Not so much a tool, but more like a topic. The equity pillar and learning about EDI, recognizing the privilege that I came in with, the unlearning that I had to do, and then what role I can best play in helping to move racial and social justice forward. That was the first time in my life that I really sat down and examined all of that, which was wildly eye-opening for me. And has changed the way that I am able to do my nonprofit work on the ground here in Washington, D.C. I would also say, and this is probably going to be a little different from other folks because the health and physical activity cohort was a little different than like the higher ed or education folks in general, but really learning how to do quantitative and qualitative analysis. So my dissertation ended up being around sugar sweetened beverage taxation. and using that as a public health intervention. And so I surveyed Washington, D.C. residents. And so learning how to structure a survey, how to not have leading questions, what the best options are for answers in terms of what the questions are. And so that is something that I have then carried into the professional space. And folks at the organization will come to me if they are doing surveys or if they're doing focus groups to say, hey, here's the structure I'm thinking, like, what are your thoughts? So kind of being a unofficial expert in those areas. So definitely the methodology of research as well.
Wait. All right. We're going to do our last pivot because that's what we do around here. And to our last question before we need to turn this back over to the lovely Latoya. I'm going to ask each of you to share with our participants in like a minute or less. Please, please, please keep it to 55 seconds or less. A piece of advice that you think that they are going to be able to really benefit from in pursuit of their EdD program. And I'll just very quickly add, Jill Alexa Perry, her favorite phrase is trust the process, right? And when she says it, you listen and you, and then you get in a year or two and you hear it and you're boxing back against it. And then you get in year 3.5 and you're like, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. I have this beautiful elephant that came from Jill Alexa Perry, and it's like diced up into different sections. And I wrote in all of the courses that I had to take over those 3 years. And as I completed a course, I filled in another piece of my elephant, because we all know that you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And on the day that I defended my dissertation, I colored in the last block, honey, visual, baby. That got me through the program, right? So get you an elephant or some such thing that will help you trust the process. Dr. Bob Scherrer, please share some advice with our
I wish I had an elephant. That was a great way to sort of position that. So my advice is, what is your why? We all have a why. What is our why? Why do we do the work that we do every day? And then how does this program tie back to that? Because then if you can always center yourself every day, you understand why you're doing it, you can put up with the challenges that are presented to you, but understand what is your why, and then how does this program support that?
Beautiful. Dr. Ellerbee.
I don't even know how I'm going to follow that, to be honest with you.
Comparison is the thief of joy. You got something to bring.
I'll just say and circle back to what I had to offer related to work-life balance. Just continue to live your life. Don't allow this program to take over. It's just one thing that you're adding onto your plate. It's a big thing, right? It's going to require a lot of time and focus, but continue to love on your families and friends and to engage with the world. Don't turn into a curmudgeon. I felt like I did towards the end because I was ready to be done. But I used to tell folks I felt like I was 10 months pregnant. So with that in mind, just continue to live your life and love your people. And then before you know it, you'll be done.
So you're right. Dr. Wright.
My phrase is progress, not perfection. There is going to be, and it ties into everything within the program, within your personal life. Like, you're not going to be able to get an A report card on everything because there's just so much you're trying to balance. But along with that, like elephant analogy, like if you're just taking steps forward, you will eventually get there. And they're not, sometimes the steps are clunky. Sometimes you're like, that's not my best assignment. That's not my best work, but you did what you had to do to get to the end goal. So I really lean on that.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Bontrager, what say you?
I would say a baby step is still a step forward. It's easy in the beginning to say, can I do this? What am I going to have to give up? And kind of the con list might be a little longer than the pro list, which might just be like, get my doctorate. when I listened to this panel the first time, they were talking about how you made so many friends, and they were, you met your maids at your bridal party, and you were going to go to weddings together. And I was like, what kind of, I'm coming to get my doctorate. But it is so true. So there are things that you are going to gain beyond the knowledge, in terms of experience, inside jokes, best friends that you will have this bond with, that you won't even be able to articulate yet. And so just go in with a very open mind, because there is definitely more good than bad.
You better believe it. And that reminds me that the Great Eights, aka Urban Ed 2019 or 2022, depending on how you look at it, our group text is still very much alive and well and popping with secret jokes, inside jokes, and all of the things. Before I turn this over,
it was the group text that got me through.
yeah,
So,
baby.
so understand, the 7 finished in 2022. I still had to come up the ranks. And
we were there.
So there's a lot of mental things that can take place when you're like the last one and everyone is finished. So it was that group text and everyone else that they weren't going to let me not finish. They weren't going to leave me behind. So you will build very strong relationships in the program. You can't help but to.
Period. And with that, I've had so much fun being your moderator. I just want to also shout out Lori DeLaley O'Connor, advisor extraordinaire, because she's that chick, and the Dr. H. Richard Milner, who was on my dissertation committee. That's the biggest flex of my life. Get back to you.
Thank you so much to all of you. Dr. Moye, thank you so much for agreeing to be our moderator for this event, and thank you all for agreeing to be part of our panelists. I also want to thank all of you who have decided to attend today. I hope that this was very helpful for you. If you have any further questions moving forward, I'm actually just putting mine and Jordan King's, who is our Assistant Director of Student and Career Services, both of our contact information if you guys have any questions moving forward. But yes, thank you so much for being here. If you are considering our EdD program in the future or this year, our deadline for applications is on February 1st. And we have one more information session on the 23rd. So definitely sign up if you want to hear more about specifics on this specific program. And I'm pretty sure if you ever want to reach out or talk to any of our panelists, I think they are all more than welcome to kind of chit chat with you if you're just contemplating a few things. And our wonderful Lynn Rosen, who's currently in the program, gets it all the time. So we are here for you guys if you need anything. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Thank you.